Mr. Nick Friedman, co-founder and president. Thank you very much.
Okay. Show of hands in the room, who here would like to be successful? Show of hands, who here would like to be successful? Hopefully everybody's hands go up. Hopefully everybody's hands are up. Otherwise, I'm in the wrong room. Show of hands of those of you who put your hands up for wanting to be successful. Show of hands for those of you who believe you are already a success. So I want to start my talk with you today by telling you something that a great mentor of mine told me early on in my career. He said, "You're never going to be a success unless you admit to yourself that you already are." So I want us to start with that framework for the rest of my talk and for the rest of our weekend and for the rest of our careers for that matter, is recognizing that you being here today, you being where you are in your business, no matter whether it's your first month, first year, or you just got your 10-year jacket, you are successful because you're doing something that very, 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 very few people get to do in their lives, which is be in a business and an entrepreneurial organization that's purpose-driven, that's making an impact, and have an opportunity to grow an income that provides a fulfillment and independent opportunity for yourself as well. Now, something else that's really important is if you think about success and what that means, there's many different types of definitions about that. You know, we as a brand and Omar and I as entrepreneurs have received plenty of accolades and recognitions over the years from third parties. And so to an outsider, they might say, hey, that company's a success. Nick and Omar are a success. But it's less important about what those outside factors have to say than what you create and define as your own definition of success. And so that's something that I want to talk to you guys today as well. So what I'm going to talk to you, and I had no idea, by the way, about what Arel Moody was going to speak with you about this morning, but it's a perfect segue into what I want to share with you all, which is really the formula or recipe for getting more levels of success, having better results, having higher levels of performance. Because at the end of the day, building leaders is one of our core values, right? And building leaders is all about getting better. It's all about what some might call self-improvement, self-help. It's about getting better and ultimately generating higher levels of results. Because yes, we are all successful today, but we should all have the ambition and desire to continue to improve upon that success, to build upon that success. There's a saying that, and Omar touched on it as well, when you're green, you're growing. As soon as you're ripe, you start to rot. So if we're not growing, we are dying. And so we always have to be thinking about in our minds, how are we going to take it to the next level? And so what I want to break down for you all today is really a formula of self-improvement, self-help, building leaders that are going to help result in higher levels of success for you, whatever that definition is in your mind for your business or for your own personal fulfillment as well. And the traditional school of thought as it relates to self-help, self-improvement, if you put 100 books out on the table, typically those self-help books would have to do with one of two things. About half of them would be relevant to motivation, right? How to work harder, do more, achieve more. The other half, which Arel kind of touched on, is about information, ideas, techniques, things to apply to have higher levels of success. So I'm going to talk about those two elements and why there's some limiting factors of those two. A third element that's kind of static in the equation of performance and success, and then what I would call the X factor, the game changer, that which is when with all of us to truly take the ceiling off of our potential and achieve higher levels of success beyond our wildest dreams, beyond our wildest imagination. So the traditional formula is motivation plus information plus what I'll call capacity equals success, equals performance, equals results. So I'm going to break down each one of those three elements, okay? Capacity is what we're born with. Capacity is our God-given talents. And the example I want to give to you guys today is LeBron James and basketball. LeBron James was born with very unique physical attributes, right? He had the ability to grow to become 6'10", strong, jump, run, shoot. Combine that with a high degree of motivation and a high level of basketball intelligence, and he's become a world champion, probably one of the best players to ever play. Would we all agree with that? Yeah. Then we've got Nick Friedman. We've got Nick Friedman's basketball capacity. Nick Friedman was born a little bit shorter. Nick Friedman was born a little bit slower. Nick Friedman could not jump quite as high. And so my capacity was what it was. It is what it is. And no matter how motivated or how much information or books I read about getting better at basketball, that was static. So we can all agree that we're all born with some God-given talent, whatever that may be, however big or small that may be, and that's both physical, mental, emotional. We're born with what we're born with. That capacity is somewhat static. So I'm not going to talk too much more about capacity because we have to just accept and embrace what we were born with, right? Let's talk about motivation. As we look at the formula for success, let's talk about motivation. Motivation is something emotional. Motivation is hearing a story or an experience that really stirs up the blood, that gets the heart going, that gets you pumped up, makes you want to run through a wall. We heard Walter Bond a couple years ago at Reunion described as the best speaker we've ever had. Highly motivating. A shark doesn't stop swimming, right? Got you pumped up. What's the limitation on motivation? What's the limitation? I heard somebody say what? Who said that? Dan said it doesn't last. So the emotions that get stirred up inside of us when we're motivated, we're pumped up. But unless we have Tony Robbins shaking us up out of bed every morning, that motivation, that energy, that emotion tends to drop back to kind of our status quo. So we come here to Reunion to get motivated. We come here to Reunion to get information. But sometimes that motivation has a temporary shelf life, if we can all agree on that. So we know capacity is static. We know motivation has some limitations in that it fades away once the emotion fades. So let's talk about information. And Arel touched on this in his talk as well. Information is great. We bought a franchise. Everybody in this room has the exact same information, ideas, tools, and techniques on how to be successful in this business. Can we all agree? We all have the exact same information. So what's the limiting factor on information? And Arel kind of gave you the answer with his talk this morning. What's the limiting factor on information? Context, right? What do we do with it? And he used the exact same example that I'm prepared to share with you. I saw a startling statistic about doctors. We would all think that doctors are probably the most healthy individuals in the country. They have all the information that they need on what it takes to be healthy. A statistic showed that 40% of physicians were overweight and 23% were obese. And so Arel used the analogy, if all we needed was information, we'd all have the six-pack abs. So information has this limiting factor. Now the difference between information and motivation is while motivation has a shelf life, it might fade away. Information is with you forever. Once you obtain the information, it's yours to keep, it's yours to utilize, it's yours to implement. So that's the difference between motivation and information. So if we think about that formula of capacity plus motivation plus information leads us to success, I think there's a missing ingredient in that formula. And the missing ingredient in that formula, again, Arel touched on it this morning, so this was a perfect setting the table for what I'm talking to you guys about. The missing ingredient is elimination of interference. So if we add our capacity, if we add motivation, if we add information, and if we subtract interference, that is how we reach higher levels of success. That is how we reach higher levels of results, whatever that definition may be for you. Now, I'm going to go back one more time. There is an understanding that we all have the ability to awaken to. And if we awaken to the fact that 100% of human experience stems from our own thoughts, 100%, not 50%, not 99%, but 100% of our experience and emotions stems from our own thoughts, things become more clear. We become more free. We become less indulgent into our fears, less indulgent into our concerns, and our ability to take advantage of the motivation, to take advantage of the information we already have, and to take advantage of our capacity that we were God-given increases. So 100% of anything we experience is coming from our own thoughts. It's coming from our own perspectives. And so I Googled interference on Google Images to come up with this image to show you guys on the formula here. And it was this sine curve, this up and down sine curve, which I thought was so perfect for what I'm trying to describe to you guys. Because if we think of that center line as being kind of a state of peace, a state of joy, a state of contentment, we as human beings are kind of going up and down, above and below that line at any given time. When we're below that line, it's when we're at kind of a state of hype, a state of stress, a state of angst, a state of anxiety. When we're above that line, that's when you see people and you describe them, for an athlete, you describe them as being in the flow. They're kind of, it makes what they're doing appear effortless. So to the extent that we can eliminate the interference, those blips on the radar that get in our way from achieving greatness, from implementing the information and taking advantage of the motivation that we have, that's how we achieve greatness. So recognizing that 100% of our experiences, 100% of human experience and interaction is stemming from our thoughts. We are the camera of that experience. We are painting the paintbrush at all times of what that perspective is, as Arel described. Knowing that is step one. We have the ability as step two to be aware of our state of mind and our conscious at any given time. We have the ability to recognize that what we're thinking at any given time is just a thought. I'm not here to say you got to change your thoughts. I'm here to say you have the power within us, we have the power within us to become aware of what it is that we're thinking about and what state of mind we're on, where we are in that sine curve, that interference curve at any given time. When you become aware of that, again, it's freeing. Our talents can start to blossom. Archimedes said, give me a lever long enough and a place to stand and I can move the world. And our company purpose is to move the world. We have the ability to get up every single day and make a positive impact in the lives of our team members, of our clients, of our franchise owners. And so eliminating that interference is what's going to allow us to accelerate ourselves into the next phase of becoming world class, to that next phase of growth that Omar just described to you all that we are heading into. And it's simply a matter of becoming aware of our state of mind when we're in it and what it is that we're actually thinking about when we're having those thoughts. We become less indulgent in the concerns, less indulgent in the fears, and we become more free and our potential becomes uncapped. So if you ask me my own definition of success, I think of, getting up every day with energy and enthusiasm, with gratitude and appreciation. My definition of success for me is enjoying what I'm doing, is being passionate about the difference that we're making through our company purpose, through our core values, helping other people achieve their goals and their vision. And somebody who I admire and who I think embodies all of those characteristics that I just described to you is Mark Cuban. To me, I admire him as what I would consider a successful person by my own definition, because he has success in the business realm, which is my craft. He enjoys basketball and has a lot of fun with that, which is one of my passions. And he seems to enjoy his time in the spotlight and his ability to influence people with his thoughts and ideas and ambitions. And he hasn't gotten lazy or complacent with anything, even though he's achieved great levels of financial success as well. And he's got a great family, and they seem very happy. So I study some of the things that he's done over his career. And I watched an interview with Mark Cuban. And the person interviewing him said, you're obviously very successful. What would you describe as the keys to your success? And he said there's really three things that he attributes to his success, or to anybody's definition thereafter. He said, number one, there are no shortcuts. There are no shortcuts. That's number one. And man, does that hold true in this business or any other business. There are no shortcuts, no magic pill, no magic bullet. Number two, if you think you're working hard enough, you're not. You got to work harder. That's what he says. It takes hard work to become successful, to reach higher levels of success. And number three, we all have to define what success means to us. Don't let somebody's Instagram or Facebook or other company dictate, or other franchise for that matter, dictate to you what success should mean, because that's when you feel empty, that's when you feel lacking, that's when you feel unwhole. So we have to define our own definition of success if we're even ever going to achieve that. Some of it may have a financial component. Some of it may have a fulfillment component. Some of it may have a philanthropic component, but we have to have the ability to define what that means for ourselves if we're ever going to achieve it and continue to raise the bar, as we like to say in this organization, and continue to grow and continue to improve. So as I think about what College Hunks is as a brand today, I think about we are a world-class organization. There's no doubt about that. We are a world-class organization. We are purpose-driven. We are socially conscious. We are values-based. We're leveraging technology to the fullest capability. And we are results-obsessed. Kelsey, I replaced results-oriented with results-obsessed. I'm sure you noticed that. We have to be results-obsessed. We have to be, because if we're not growing, we're dying. We have to be results-obsessed. And if we are results-obsessed, we will continue to achieve great things in all the other areas of our business. And we'll continue to make powerful impacts through our Feeding Children Everywhere partnership, through our customer reviews and everything else that goes along with it. So we are these things. And we're going to continue to raise the bar together, collectively, to do this even further, to do this even more, to achieve higher levels of results, higher levels of franchise owner fulfillment, revenue growth, profit growth, community impact. We were all here 2 years ago when Stephen Nichols stood on the stage over in Tampa, and he ended the mantra of his speech, which still holds very true today, that is, we are all just getting started. We are all just getting started. This company, as a brand, is 15 years young. Many of the people in this room, by the way, many of the people in this room are in their first, second, or third year of business. Infancy as independent business owners. Starbucks and Apple took 25 years before they hit a tipping point in their organization. 25 years it took Starbucks and Apple to hit a 10x tipping point in their organization. We're 15 years in to this journey together. College Hunks, after 10 years, was doing about 20 million, maybe a little bit more, in system-wide revenue. The next 5 years, we're now over 120 million in system-wide revenue. So we've started to hit a growth tipping point as well, but it's just getting started, as we continue to talk about, just getting started. Side note I like to remind Roman of when I show this slide is I think that tipping point happened right around the time Roman joined the organization. So we like to say we had College Hunks before Roman, now we've got College Hunks AR after Roman, which was a key to this tipping point and this accelerated growth as well. And as a humble leader, like he says he didn't do anything. So as I mentioned just a second ago, about 2/3 of the folks in this room are in our infancy. We're in our infancy together. So think about that. Put that in perspective, how long life is, how long a business journey can be. And let's not get eager. Let's not try to shortcut the success, like Mark Cuban said, is a sure recipe for disaster. Let's not get complacent or lazy as we go along this journey. And let's not let our thoughts and the interference of our thoughts impede what we have at our fingertips, which is the motivation and the information to be successful. A study was done of about, I think, 200 companies over a long period of time. I think it was 2 decades, maybe 3 decades. And they studied like 30 different criteria of these companies that were consistent and correlated along that study. And the companies that had sustained rapid growth over both periods of time, they weren't like, they didn't grow and then shrink or shrink and then grow, they grew and then grew, had these 4 criteria in common. And so this is going to be what sets us apart and keeps us growing as an organization, as a brand, as we head into this decade and beyond. First and foremost is a defined and clearly communicated strategy. That is our vision traction organizer that we share in our integrator report that goes out annually and quarterly. That's what we have our strategic quarterly planning sessions with. That's what we engage with our franchise advisory council for input and feedback on as we develop that. Number 2, I thought this was interesting when I heard this. I heard it from a Harvard business professor give this talk and he talked about these criteria. He said, the successful organizations that endure the test of time had an execution that consistently meets client expectations. And I had a bit of a challenge with that initially because, look, we're a listen, fulfill, and delight. We're a go above and beyond. We're a add the plus one. We're a, let's be a Disney-like organization. But the key to the success was at least consistently meeting client expectations, because what happens if a client's used you 3, 4, 5 times? What happens to their expectations? They're going to continue to increase. And sometimes those expectations, if we wow them beyond their wildest imagination every single time, their expectations come to a point where it's, in some cases, difficult, if not impossible, to even meet those high expectations, right? So we have to have a consistent ability to, at minimum, deliver and meet our client expectations. Number 3, we have to continue to embrace our culture of high performance, high values, and innovation. We have to appreciate our heritage, where we've been. Omar painted some of those historic elements of this brand from just 15 years ago, but we've got to embrace change. We've got to be willing to test and innovate and disrupt and ideate ways to continue to position the business as a competitive differentiator amongst our competitors. And then last but not least, a structure that simplifies working in and with the organization. The bigger we get, the more we have to focus on simplification and get back to the basics of what we know works and what we know can continue to elevate the business. Who here practices some form of the EOS model, Entrepreneurial Operating System, traction? So I would say less than 10% of the room. You guys are going to hear a lot more from me and the performance team over the coming months, coming years about the EOS model, because this is the framework that has taken our business from the 20 million in system-wide revenue to over 120 million of system-wide revenue. That's the system, that's the model, and there's tools within that system and model that can help rein in the chaos of your business. Once your business surpasses $1 million in revenue, start talking to your performance team, start talking to your performance FBC about some of the tools that EOS offers. It's not as relevant when you're less than $1 million in revenue, but some of the tools, the vision traction organizer, the people analyzer, the accountability chart, the scorecard that we use for tracking the success in this business, your meeting rhythm with your sort of influential hunks, and ways that you tackle issues in your business. Those are all tools that you don't have to reinvent, and these are the best practices that can help you be successful as well. Just as strategy is important, equally if not more important is our organizational health. I watch interviews after interviews of winning sports teams in the locker room, and one of the common themes I always hear them say is we trusted each other. We trusted our teammates. We trusted the preparation. We trusted our coaches. We trusted the ownership. This organization is built on a foundation of trust, where we give trust freely. We give trust openly and vulnerable. We're willing to ask for help if we have questions. We're willing to admit our mistakes and faults if we make a mistake, and we don't judge each other for that. Because if we have that trust, if we're willing to embrace that trust, then we can embrace healthy conflict. Omar and I, in the early days, used to get in near fist fights arguing over who was going to empty out the truck in the morning or who was going to answer the phone that day. But we trusted each other. We were right back to business as soon as we had those arguments. So we embrace healthy conflict. We commit to decisions once we make a decision. We don't rule by consensus. Once a decision is made, we move forward and we all row. There's no, hey, I told you shouldn't have made that decision. Nope. Once that decision is made, we all commit to it, even if you didn't like it or not. We hold one another accountable. We're willing to be held accountable. Building leaders as our core value is all about accountability. We embrace it. We don't take it personally if somebody holds us accountable. We don't get offended if somebody holds us accountable. We want to be held accountable, and we want to hold each other accountable as well. And I talked about being results obsessed. We had to put the results of the brand above and beyond any individual agendas or any individual motives as well. Now, I stood up on here on stage a couple years ago and quoted Bill Belichick. I talked a little bit about the New England Patriots and their, long tenure of winning. And of course, they're not in the Super Bowl this year, but they interviewed Nick Saban, who coached Alabama football. They interviewed Bill Belichick, coach of the New England Patriots. Both had actually coached together at one time in Cleveland. And it's kind of unfortunate Cleveland never benefited from that. But one of their mantras that they talk about is do your job, right? Do your job. And it's so simple, but as I read further about their mantra of that, it's not it's not as simple as just saying, do your job, because the people you say that to, the people we say that to, they have to know what their job is. We have to have a mutual agreement of what each person's job is on the team. So our franchise owners need to have a mutual agreement with the hunks of what their job really is. The franchisor and franchisee has to have a mutual agreement about what each other's respective jobs are. When we have that mutual agreement, not the expectation, but a mutual agreement, then we can say, do your job. We can use Arel's quote and say, stop being an egg, stop being a carrot, be coffee. So safety, as Omar touched on, is the theme of this conference this year. And safety is everyone's job. Safety is everyone's job from the top to the bottom of the organization and everything in between, because if we're not protecting ourselves and protecting this house, then we might as well not be here. And so it's a table stake, but it's something that can easily be lost sight of if we're not focusing on it, and we're bringing that into focus this year. So what is Brand Central's primary job? And there's a lot more to this, but Brand Central's primary job is to develop systems and processes and solutions that help enhance the ability for the franchise owner to execute their business at the local level, whether that be technology, marketing, operations, hiring, recruiting, entrepreneurial operating system, whatever the case may be, call center. Brand Central's job is to continue to innovate, improve, and upgrade the solutions and systems and efficiencies that ultimately can be leveraged and utilized by everyone within the system. So what's our franchise owner's job? Again, there's a lot more to this, but I like to make it very simple for the sake of this presentation. Our franchise owner's job is very simple. If we deliver a better experience for the clients who need moving and hauling services than their alternative in our markets, we win. That's our job as franchise owners. If we deliver a better experience than their alternative, we win in this business over the long period of time. And then let's talk about our hunks. What is our hunks' job? Our hunks' job is to be and deliver on the brand promise, what we're promising our clients. Our brand promise is trust, care, and the hunks acronym: honest, uniformed, nice, knowledgeable service. If our hunks deliver on that, our hunks win. If our hunks deliver on that, our franchise owners win. If our franchise owners win, we all win. So now let's talk about Nick and Omar's job. A striking resemblance between these two hunks and those two hunks right there, if I do say so myself. So as the founders of the company, our job has evolved as well. We are using the EOS model from a book called Rocket Fuel, which is a book in the Traction series that talks about the integrator visionary relationship. So Omar and I, at this point of the business evolution, are the co-visionaries in the organization. We rely on Roman's leadership and pragmatism and ability to leverage data and logic to distill all of our 1,000 crazy ideas that we have every other day and build that into the team build the team that can then execute on the most impactful elements of that vision. So our job is to set the strategic long-term vision, where we're going as a brand, define the culture, what we stand for, ensure that that culture is being lived, hold people accountable, in particular our integrator and his team and the leadership team accountable, be a cheerleader for everyone in the organization, provide the resources that we all need to do our job, and break down the barriers that are impeding us from achieving the results. And I'm going to add one more job that is imperative that Omar and I adhere to, and I'll share a little story behind it. So I turned 38 years old recently, and my dad is exactly double my age. My dad is 76. So he had me at 38. He's 76 now, and so I said, "Hey, Dad, you're exactly twice my age. You've lived exactly double the amount of time that I've lived. So what words of wisdom, what advice can you give me for the next 38 years of my life?" And he looked at me dead in the eye, and he just said, "Nick, don't mess it up." So that's one of the other jobs of Nick and Omar, is to not stick our finger in the soup too much to the point where we're messing it up. The visionary's job is to come up with 1,000 ideas. 999 of them might need to get cut on the cutting room floor, but hopefully one of those 1,000 are going to be transformational to continue to propel the organization forward. So as we think about that formula of success that we talked about at the beginning, if we think about the context of the way you look at things that Arel described in his talk, if we as a collective whole recognize that we are one entity, the College Hunks brand together, our capacity as a brand together is far beyond what any individual person's capacity is in this room. I mean, it's 1 + 1 = 1,000 when we leverage the collective whole of this organization. So our capacity is through the roof. Our potential is through the roof in terms of the performance results we can all achieve together. The motivation, we should keep each other motivated. You know, keep sharing the motivating quotes on Yammer that get us excited, that want to help us run through a brick wall if we're having a down day, or pick each other up if we're, you know, having one of those just nightmare days where the truck broke down and the guys didn't show up and all these other things are coming that are just making us feel a little bit demotivated. Dig down and support one another to get through that. Information, leverage the information that we have in this system. The Hunks way is defined and it works. We have franchise owners having $1 million net incomes in this business, which is beyond my wildest imagination. When you see at the awards ceremony, close to 50 franchise owners in the $1 million club, when probably 5-10 years ago it was less than 5 or 6. So we leverage the information, and then most importantly, recognize and awaken to the fact that 100% of our experiences as human beings is stemming from our own thoughts. Just be aware of that. I'm not asking you to control your thoughts. This is not an endorsement for meditation or anything along those lines. This is just a fact of life, that 100% of what we experience is from our thoughts. So if we can have the ability to become aware of our thoughts at any given time, it gives it less weight, it gives it less power, and it takes that interference curve from being like this to maybe just being a little bit like this. And when you can have your mind a little bit clearer and freer to think and do and act, it's going to prevent you from giving up. It's going to prevent you from wanting to get out. It's going to prevent you from blaming the franchisor. It's going to prevent you from blaming your employees. It's going to prevent all of us from doing those things if we can get out of our own way and be aware of our thoughts. And if we do that, if we embrace our capacity, our motivation, our information, and if we recognize that the interference is the only thing standing in our way from having higher levels and greater levels of success, the potential is limitless. So I can't tell you guys how grateful I am to be standing in front of you today, how appreciative I am for the energy and enthusiasm that we all bring to this organization as far as living the core values and distilling the company purpose and getting excited about this mission that we're all on, this journey that we're all on together. And I'm excited, more importantly, about what is yet to come in 2020 and beyond. Woo Hunk! Thank you.
Big hand for Nick, everybody. And Omar. Come on, they both deserve a big round of applause.
Thank you, sir.
Literally none of us would be here right now today if it wasn't for these gentlemen. And Roman, we appreciate everything you do for the company, too. You guys are awesome. They're a power team over here, and I'm happy to be my first year having fun with you guys. All right.